Season 7, Episode 5, number 270 of the Decoded Podcast. I'm going to call this the Canadian Thanksgiving edition, just because I can. And,
I'm going to call it the Walmart surprise.
oh, I like this. Okay,
Yeah.
so depending on who you talk to, whether
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
me
we're
or
yeah,
Clough,
yeah.
you like that?
Listen to me. We can compete.
Oh,
What side of the screen are you on? For where am I on your screen? Am I on the right or the left
so
side?
on my screen, you're on the right side of the pane, and I'm on the
Me
left
too. Me
side of the.
too. So if we do
Oh,
this,
oh, oh, no, sorry, I'm on the other side, Chris. Yeah.
cool.
Well, where are you going?
I was going to
There.
fist bump you.
No, I know, but you were. This is what it looked like to me. You were going back.
Oh, are we? Are we? Am I going the right side or no?
No, no, the other side.
Well, because it's there.
Oh,
We go. Dunk.
bunk.
There we go. We got it. Yeah. So that's I like that. So that's reversed fist bump. Anyways, yeah. Welcome to Sunday.
Welcome
The
to Sunday.
Sunday edition. Brought to you by Tim Hootens. No, Tom Hootens.
That was the best. The Tom Hootens. So what would we call mine? I'm drinking a fake McDonald. I can say that, fake McDonald's. What would we
I don't
call
know.
it?
What was
McDonald's?
the, what was the
McRyan's or something?
I like the I'm trying to think of, remember that movie, is it Coming to America? And there's that franchise that the guy was running, that Eddie Murphy, and that the two characters got their job at, and he's, what do you call him, Mick? I'm McDonald's, Mick something, I forget what he called it, but he basically it's a McDonald's knockoff.
Okay.
I don't know. We got any listeners? Maybe they can remind me. Someone will Google that. But yeah,
Uh,
I don't know, Mick.
Mix
I don't know.
something.
It doesn't. Yeah, I think I'm still too consumed with the Tom Hootens. I'm gonna write that actually on the cup.
I love that. The Tom Hootens. That's the disc. That's the giant tiger of Tim Hortons. Correct? Is that fair to say? Rochelle's laughing out loud too. Rochelle, when I was at, good morning, Rochelle, and welcome to the
Good morning,
Decoded
Rochelle.
Podcast.
And thanks for coming out on a Sunday. Like, let's be serious. Like, let's honor this for a moment. The fact that someone would come and spend Sunday with us instead of Saturday. That's pretty cool.
I have to say, Rochelle's probably prepping for the day. And I can imagine she's in her kitchen and she's got her cell phone or her iPad or her generic touchscreen on, one side of her as she's doing something on the other. This is what I imagine. But anyway, we're going to move away from my imagination. We're going to go to Friday. The other day. Friday was a PD day here for my district. Tom Hootens.
Tom Hootens.
I love it.
It doesn't come up too good on either. There we go, Tom Hootens. I wish I had a big white paint marker that I could just go over that. My Tom Hootens Cafe.
Tom Hootens Cafe. Friday. I'm at my location.
Oh, that marker stinks, bro.
I'm sorry, bro.
I thought that was me at first, but I think it was the marker. Sometimes Sharpies are like that.
If you smelled like marker. Dad, you smell like marker.
But it's not marker. Like, it's not. It was not good. Sorry.
No problem.
Keep going.
I look out, so I leave my little space and you saw my space. You saw the main hallway of Bosco. So I'm in that main hallway and I'm walking from one end of the first floor to the other to use the bathroom. And I look out the window facing the church and I think I see Rochelle. Rochelle, were you? Oh, what's not far off, Rochelle? I said something, you said something, and anyway, Rochelle fills in. Rochelle, were you at the board office on Friday morning sometime? I don't know. I look out and I'm like, I think that's Rochelle, but why would Rochelle be here when she's supposed to be? Oh, I don't know where Rochelle was supposed to be. I didn't read that email from your principal, Rochelle. I hit delete when I got that email because I knew where I was supposed to be, and it's more than enough for me to know where I'm supposed to be, and I knew where my wife was supposed to be, so we were covered that way. But I think I saw Rochelle at the board office. Now it wouldn't
I
be
think to
far
I think to
off.
cover us from the legal perspective, that you
Legal
saw
perspective.
someone
Oh
that
shit!
may or may not have been Rochelle. We want to be cautious, right? Because
I saw
we
a
don't want to
human
saw
that
human.
from far away
Mhm.
reminded me of Rochelle.
There we go.
I was right. Okay, so Rochelle's in the kitchen. Yes. Oh, I'm not far off from the device being in the kitchen. I like that. And all French immersion teachers were at the CEC in the AM. So you were leaving with somebody. Oh,
Nice.
it may still not have been you, but I look out the window and I saw two female looking individuals walking away from the CEC past the church and probably to their cars wherever they were parked. And one of them reminded me of you, Rochelle. Okay, French immersion teachers weren't included on the official memo. Yeah, we tend to forget about all of you. I know that feeling. I don't even think people know I exist anymore, but that's okay by me.
I need to throw some Thanksgiving out. Here we
Do
go.
it.
Here comes some Thanksgiving. Right now, I have many thanks. Send it out to. Okay, Rochelle gets to receive this. Rochelle, you're receiving this on behalf of other FI teachers. Because here's the thing, it's triggered me. I right now have am working through. So Rochelle, I don't know if I've ever mentioned, I'm in high school. I'm a high school teacher. This year, I've switched to a new school and a new program. I'm experiencing. Um, I'm experiencing. Actually, I want to start a different way. No, Rochelle's like, come on, Clough, lay it on me, lay it on me. But I'm I have always I've always sort of strove to connect with as many different educators as possible. I actually consider my learning and education to be the full buffet. Like I will learn from any educator anywhere in the world, and if and dig into those conversations. And mostly two reasons. One, because I find the education business, the education environment fascinating. Like I just really do. Deeply fascinating. Second is because I never really know when I'm going to need a skill. Like I it's almost wrong-headed for me to target PD, because every time I target PD, as I'm sitting in that PD session or that AQ, I'm like, man, I already know somebody that's doing this great work. Did I spend this money? Why am I using up this time? So I've said it before, my pathway through this career has been really kaleidoscopic. So in this new portfolio, I am having moments of, I bet you this is one of those things. I bet you this moment, this place I'm trying to arrive at with this kid is one of those places that when elementary school teachers are talking about their challenges of practice and they happen to be sitting at a secondary panel table, the elementary school teachers think secondary just doesn't get it. They just don't get it. I'm now on the other side having some of these moments, Rochelle, and I'm like, this is one of those moments. This is the conversation that I had 10 years ago with Beth Lyons or Jen Mac Brown, and they're talking about working in Aviva Dunsinger, talking about like assessment and gathering data and working with kids and celebrating just that joy and energy. I'm like, this is that moment, except I'm lensing it through a secondary lens, and lensing and limiting it through a secondary lens, because shit changes when you hit high school. You move into a credit bearing system. That's bureaucracy at its best, right? So compliments still coming, Rochelle. Hang on tight. So one of the things that I am working through right now, which I have never, ever considered, not that I've never had to, I just have never. So this is like, I've blocked myself off from thinking this way. So I've spent a lifetime pretty much in student success based portfolios, whether it was actually student success or I've done some of the work that Chids has done in re-engagement. I've done alt ed and special education, student services, guidance, mentorship. I've been there. Okay. So what this year, one of the brand new things that I'm having to deeply consider and even like question my own, like, why have I not gone deeper on this? is around the question is how do you support someone's beginning skill sets at reading? So I'm not talking like the comprehension end where like the I don't read well is what I've always dealt with in secondary. There's something that's keeping them from reading well, which is really abstract, but it's where the actual skill set is. There's enough threads there that you can kind of gather it together into a toolkit. I'm on a space now where an individual can't read. Now, I'm squeezing this down. There's some letter awareness. There's some, they're connecting sounds. There's some keywords. There's some sight words. But I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I've never experienced, paid attention to, got bothered to really dig down to see the layers of supporting a student to go from very little reading to the level of reading that I've previously observed in high school students. I've never been there in the beginning, or I've never chosen to be there in the beginning. Coming back to X/Twitter, I have started to follow FI teachers, and I've been watching FI, specifically elementary, and watching their tools of engaging students in language development and language growth, but orally. Like, how are you encouraging someone to hear their words outside their head? Which I'm starting to realize there's two different processing platforms there: the internal voice versus the external voice, and the community building element of learning language together. And I'm like, just like, yeah, I want that. I want that. I want that. Like, I'm watching how they're doing different flip charts. I'm watching how they organize their circle time. I'm watching how they are actually the resources they put in the room to activate language in a passive fashion where the kids aren't being forced to speak, but the environment is like the third teacher and it's helping them just to speak. And then also listening for the celebrations at the end and really trying to pay attention to those micro moments of celebration where they get it, So, Rochelle, that was my TED talk, but it ends with, I think it's cool. I think it's cool that I know you. I think it's cool that, you're doing the French immersion stuff. I think it's cool that I've only recently started to really, eat my vegetables, so to speak, and learn learn about developing my own skill set for something that I've completely taken for granted in the past. Completely. There's that. And the second part, I think I told Chids about this year and next year, my long range is to dig back into. So when you take your spec ed 2, that's where it's all about the assessment. So the psychoeducational assessments. So this year I'm sort of working long form on being able to understand a learner profile just from data alone. This isn't me leaving the qualitative behind in the relationship. I just realized I'm not strong enough, savvy enough to take that data-driven stuff that, let's say, a psychologist, psychiatrist working, or even the edu assessments. I'm not quick enough in my own assessment to translate that into something useful. So I'm doing that parallel. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you. And others. So.
You lit me up with a couple of things there. Let's see if I could remember them, because I want to. Rochelle gave you some. She's sharing that she does a lot of choral reading and responses at the beginning, that's awesome. Listening to you talk to Rochelle about this reminds me of the times I've taught grade 1 and even 2. And basically, bro, it's like I start my year assuming none of my kids can read. So if you can imagine, I'm at home planning and I'm planning activities. I'm looking at the curriculum. I'm trying to figure out, like, there's no here's the lesson, here's the work, see you later. It doesn't exist. Like, they can't read. So it's like, am I giving them heavy text instructions? No, because they can't handle, some of them can. So then you're differentiating and you're figuring out, okay, oh boy. And back then, I don't think we're allowed to do this anymore. Uh, after you do your reading assessments, you've got groups, and then you base instruction depending on the level of those groups. So it's like, you've got different groups, and there's got to be a lowest group and there's got to be a highest group. Like not everybody's in the same at the same level. So then you start to figure out, okay, that group can handle this, this, and this, and you kind of set them off and you let them go, and then the group you're meeting with who struggles or aren't where people think they should be, you operate differently with them. So it's just interesting listening to you talk about this and what you're currently experiencing, and then thinking my reality for many years, just like Rochelle's, is you have kids in your class and you're like, um, there there isn't just this, there's the assumption they can't read and they can't write. And I say that, I don't want teachers throwing pie at me or whatever. I just say it in like if you if you plan for cookie cutter's not going to work. If you have a cookie cutter lesson and you are opposed to the highs and the lows, then you're screwed. You're looking for behavior problems, you're looking for extra stress that you think you're avoiding the stress when you plan. You're like, "Oh, this is great. I'm not stressed." I would rather feel stress in the planning stage than in the execution stage. I want to be able to, here's what we're talking about today, this is what we're doing. Okay, this group come see me, you get they get their orders, they go. This group come see me. Like it's nonstop action, action, action. And I was reminded of starting a school year and being like, I expect none of them to read or write. And if they can write, they don't want to. Like the boys generally were always like, we have to write? I'm like, writing is more than just picking up a pencil and putting text on a piece of paper. So give me a chance, trust me a little bit, and you will see writing is more than what you think it is. And you will excel in different areas and stages of writing. Trust me. Just trust me. You loaded me up with that.
Can I ask a thing?
You can.
And maybe Rochelle, and maybe you'll have a comment on this too. So part of so this realization that this being kind of a topic that secondary teachers just don't get, there's a really fascinating I don't know what I want to call it. There's a fascinating sort of WTF moment whenever I've taken something that I've sort of learned in a different jurisdiction, the way that I kind of wander, the digital classrooms and stuff like that. And I'll come back to a conversation with someone in my home school and bring them, the tribute that I find is watching and listening to someone try and compartmentalize that as like, well, that's not how we do it. What do you mean? Like you're asking a question that's like, we don't really ask at secondary. So I immediately see the panel difference, right? So I asked another teacher, not our multi-language learner teacher, but someone else in spec ed. I asked them, I was like, what is your approach to teaching someone to read? And the first person I asked, they kind of did a head shake, like, what do you mean teach them to read? Like there was no ready answer there. There was no ready answer there. So this idea of sometimes asking questions sometimes there's defense mechanisms that keep questions from being asked. And then you ask it and someone's like, oh, come on. What'd you have to go and ask that question for? Like almost like people are white knuckling. There's a whole list of white knuckle conversations that I'll say at secondary, you're kind of hoping never really spring up because it makes life really complicated. And sometimes the pursuit of that question, like you don't know the collateral damaged necessarily until you start unwinding it, right? So, for instance, in a really sort of vague fashion, there's big resistance at the high schools that I've been at to start talking about AI usage even in the most general sense, right? Like our board is really, I get the sense like they're kind of skittish to kind of open that conversation. The type of conversation I'm talking about, but I don't like the um the attribution is this idea of the can of worms, right? That idea, you sort of crack it open, like, now look what you've done, or the Pandora's box, whatever you want to say. You're opening these things up that, you know, they are opened so easily, but there's no way to put it back into the compartment or container that it came out of. And in doing so, you're wreaking havoc on everybody's brains or their life or whatever. Um, I find I've sort of built a practice on that kind of questioning and question answer, like that questioning. And I always stay around. Like, I'm not like, I don't bug bomb it and leave. I stick around for the messiness. So in that way, I'm a responsible wrecker, I guess. But asking my colleague around, how do you, and I'm not being the royal or the sort of abstract universal, asking you, teacher, how do you teach your kids to read? And then it's sort of like, well, I don't. Like, I don't spend time on actually teaching reading. So this question, I'm not surprised. I'll say I won't be surprised if it's hard for me to find individuals that actually have a reading strategy built into their special education program, whatever they're doing in the class. Um, so the pursuit of this question is really opening up kind of my eyes to, if I encounter a kid in high school that doesn't read well, I now know that's because we're not teaching reading in our spec ed classrooms. Like, I now have at least, the soft survey, right? Here's my roundabout question. Sometimes the way that I word questions precludes the question from being answered as well as I want it to be. So depending on the words that I use, sometimes it can sort of allow someone to kind of jump out of the convo quick, or sometimes just be confused by the question. I do that. I get it. I'm working on it. Not really. I ask my question. So in elementary, would an elementary school teacher say, today while I was teaching kids to read, So that phrase, is that a credible strategic statement in elementary? Or would it be said a different way? Now, teaching kids to read has a certain compliance and enforcement element about it. And we kind of sometimes go abstract on that. We talk about lead learner and we talk about facilitating learning. We will use a softer edge to say that we're kind of part of the process as opposed to, the doing it from the front of the room. So is that language useful? Because what I want to make sure that I'm doing is that when I start this conversation at secondary, and I know you folks are in a different jurisdiction than me, but I want to make sure that I'm starting with the right key terms, because as soon as someone says, "What do you mean teach them to read?" I'm like, "Okay, well, this is the language that they use in elementary. So where is it that we can do the same?" So I'll start there. And if it has to adjust, it has to adjust. But would you say that you teach kids to read? Would you say coach? Would you say coach? Would you say mentor? What would you say?
So when you ask that question, I'd love to hear Rochelle's perspective as
Mhm.
well because she's a primary teacher and has been
Yep.
for many years. I would say to you that when I think of language arts in primary, there's that saying that in primary and some of junior, kids are learning to read so that in intermediate and high school they can read to learn. Have you ever heard that saying?
Mhm.
Okay, so we spend a lot of time. Yeah, okay, so Rochelle, I'm putting this in because I feel the same way. Rochelle says yes and no. I look at it as teaching them to speak, read, and write. If they can't orally use language effectively, they can't read. So 100% I agree with her there. And what I'm gonna, in terms of, you know, oral comes first. We even know that with our multi-language learners. It's oral first, and it breaks down, right? Like you have to start where you get the biggest bang for your buck and then move in the direction that you can as you scaffold them to learn language. But anyway, having said that, the yes and no of what Rochelle is saying, I agree with, because there were moments where I would be sitting with a student and working with them, and I would literally be the person. I would be the sage on the stage. I am literally instructing them and asking them to do things that require compliance. What sound does this letter make? Oh, no, this is the sound it makes. Can you repeat that? Yeah. Look at this word. Where's that sound in this word? It's like there were there were moments of surgical surgical strikes, like this, do this like I'm doing this now. They do it. Like there's that repeating, there's that old school teaching, but then there is, do you hear that sound? There's like a crinkle sound. Weird. I hope Rochelle can't hear it. Um, it's
Is it
aliens.
is it my headphone?
It sounds like static. Oh, it was going away. What happens when you
Hmm.
stop doing that? You got, where are your headphones? Oh, you're not wearing your Beats.
Remember I told you they died
You did.
and I haven't replaced them. So these are Beats, but these are the ones I use for
Oh.
running. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to ignore the sound and keep going.
All right. Ignore. Keep going.
When I was teaching kids in primary, oh, it's gone now. Whatever. Anyway,
Well, I muted my microphone, so I don't know.
students would work at different centers. And one of the centers was with me, and it was direct instruction. So if you were meeting with me, you were going to be getting direct instruction on a particular strategy or idea that goes with reading. We called them guided reading groups. I believe they're not supposed to exist anymore. And I'm out of this. My wife's in the middle, and Rochelle's in the middle of learning all this new stuff. That was direct instruction, where I would teach them something, they would demonstrate it to me, and then I would correct and provide feedback. And I would do that with every member that was sitting with me in that group. Now, while I'm doing that, there are kids off in other centers with their groups doing things, practicing strategies and working on different things. And every now and again I would go over to them. And in those situations, I wasn't directly instructing. It was more of a coaching or a mentoring, right? Like, um, so there was a little bit of everything, but there was direct instruction. So if I knew Jimmy was still struggling identifying the letters of the alphabet, then when Jimmy would sit with me, not teaching Jimmy about all the intricacies of reading a sentence if Jimmy doesn't even know what the letters are in that sentence. So it was very surgical. It was very strategic. And then we would build with where you're at. And I would tell the kids all the time when I do the reading assessments, some of them would wear their score as a badge. And I would say, listen, it's really good for you that you're proud of yourself for your accomplishment of learning to read. But we're not going to go out into the community and use it against other people. That's not cool. That's not what we're here to do. And the speech that I would give over and over again until I was blue in the face and they were bored to death was, we all start at a different space. And my job and your job is to move you from where I see your starting point. So if you start here, I'm expecting growth. Just because you're here doesn't mean that you're just chilling in a corner somewhere. I expect growth. That's going to be success for us. I don't know if I answered your question, but there is, when I taught, there was direct instruction at certain times to teach them certain skills and strategies. And then there was a lot of observation to see what it looked like when they were practicing. So I give them feedback, immediate feedback. And then there were moments where, like during when it was self-selected reading time, and they would spend time practicing their reading skills with a text that they chose. Um, Sometimes I would say, "Come sit with me. I want you to read with me." And they're like, is this like an instruction? I'm like, no, I want I want to talk to you. What are you reading? Why are you reading it? Is it bringing you joy? What are you struggling with? I've got all these wonderings. And, obviously I'm observing how they're doing what they're doing, but I also wanted to try to build that love of reading that I didn't have. I wanted That was the time to practice your skills, but to also just Mr. C's not on your back. Practice. Tell me, what are you reading? Even, and I never hammered my kids for this, even if they had a text that was way beyond them, I didn't care. I'm like, why'd you pick that book? I love the pictures. But as they're looking at the images, they're flipping the book. And I could see them using their finger to track things. Like all these little things that we teach them to do to help them learn how to read. I don't care if you can't read the book. It's self-selected reading time. I told you you could pick what you wanted. It's not, as long as it's appropriate for the classroom and the school and blah, 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 all those like rules and regulations. I don't care if you're looking at the thickest um, Guinness Book of World Records. They love those. So I'd buy 2 or 3 of those every year, the new ones, and put them in my library. And they would want them because there's cool pictures and there's lots of great ideas in there and stuff, right? I don't care if you can't read that paragraph. Why'd you pick the book? What's it doing for you? What strategies are you using and practicing that I've taught you directly to help you become a better reader? Talk to me. And we would have that conversation, and I would take my notes and I would use those to help, build my lessons and provide feedback to parents and blah, 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 blah. So it was like, it's daunting from the outside looking in. But for me, and I don't know if Rochelle would agree, once I would be in it, I'd be in that storm, in that snow globe that people shake, and cause chaos. It was a different world because I had data from the kid every day that would help me prepare for them to move them to the next level. So it was a holistic thing. That's why I think it's difficult for secondary teachers, because you have content. Like, you have content that must be, okay, maybe not you, but like I'm thinking of my son's history class. They're not going to take the time to teach a kid to read because they're like, I got to teach this kid ancient civilization and this and that. Tough for them.
So yeah, so that's a whole other episode, right? Because we're not content. It triggers so many conversations that happen at secondary. We're not content. Even if we do the basic, we're not content teachers. We're teachers of humans, right? Like, it's that.
But
whole,
not everybody sees that, bro, and right?
No, exactly. I'm just saying we're dipping into a whole other Walmart surprise conversation that. Again, we can take this as an elongated kind of pursuit. Maybe this year we'll talk about this again for sure. This idea that because that same conversation is the dark side of that conversation is, well, that the parallel conversation there is a math teacher saying, I don't need to help a kid with their word literacy. I don't need to do that. Yet they're using word problems in their math class. Right? Or it's the English teacher that says, I don't have to talk about data management, yet they're reading articles that include charts and bar graphs. So what I love about the space between those two flags in the ground is where I am, and I've always loved being there. I don't mind being that glue, that gray zone, that transitional space. And because I strive to make it less abstract. So again, what I'm digging about following elementary school teachers and French immersion teachers, any language immersion teacher has been very useful for me because I'm watching and I'm stealing their tools. I love that, Rochelle. So here, the thing that I've learned, and this is what I loved, and I'm going to brag about this after the fact, but Rochelle can take credit too. I already knew about the let's talk first, read later kind of a thing. Let's because I do understand. I kind of look at reading, my starting point in helping a kid to read is, let me observe how you synthesize the world going on around you. And I'm going to look at that synthesis or that processing in a conversation. So we're going to start in conversation. And then I'm going to move from open-ended and choice into push-ups, I call it. And I'm like, here's where we're going to develop. And the kids, they're already getting cheesed off with some of the Cloughisms, but I do that intentionally to kind of disconnect how we do school. I'm actively trying to get them to think differently about how we do school. I talk about doing push-ups in math and push-ups in literacy. My new literacy and numeracy, I do it specifically. And I think I told you last week, I said, it's not so that we get better at push-ups. It's so that the other goal that we're trying to get to is made easier, right? There's very few people in the world that would say I'm doing push-ups to get better at push-ups, but they maybe are working on flexibility, core. They want to they're 70 years old and they just want to feel stronger when they pick up the groceries, right? So I look at the sort of the push-ups factor at the other end of the spectrum. Sometimes it gets integrated along the way, but that would be the more open versus more closed approach to how I teach. So I love the fact that Rochelle saying, I'm not saying easy, I'll say more open. More open would be, let's just have a conversation. And I'm going to track a little bit of it. And I might do a circle back. You know, it's almost like doing a mini podcast or interview with the kids, so to speak. I'm curious. I'll keep pressing Rochelle here. Is the base toolkit for a teacher the same if you are working in French immersion or any sort of ELA course, so your language arts? Is that base language development criteria the same regardless of the actual language that you're laying on top of it?
Yeah. That's a good question. We'll wait and see what she says. As we kind of wait, I want to share two things. So Rochelle said that I did in fact see Rochelle, and that the person she was walking with was the colleague of hers who's in my course. So that's another interesting layer, which is kind of cool. I was like, I think that's Rochelle. Now I'm like, that was Rochelle and her teaching partner, which is kind of cool. Nice. Rochelle posed this question for you. How do you help students decode language effectively?
As in, she's put me on the spot to answer that?
I don't think she would never.
No, straight up, Rochelle.
I think maybe she just wants you to consider how in your helping kids to.
If she's taking that straight up, I'm going to answer it straight up.
Okay.
So, Rochelle, I got no freaking clue. I wouldn't be in this. And this is my starting point. So part of the, I accept. I've been your mission. Should you choose to accept it? No, I'm in. I'm in. So bring it my way. I have a habit of saying yes. Sometimes I say yes, even when it doesn't matter if I say yes. But I've grown a practice of saying yes because it's just better for my mindset. So saying yes, knowing full well that I'm obligated to do it anyways, helps me get over that hurdle of what the hell just happened. So, right. And that's important for you mentally. So I don't lose time or get bogged down in any sort of blockages that keep me from actually falling into duty or service. Yes. But I'm going to come back if it's not working out well. And if they come back and they say, but you said yes, I'm like, I was saying yes to the beginning. Now I'm like, whoa, please, I need some help. Okay. So I actually would not be able to tell you. I would need some like, well, Clef, do you do this? And I would probably say, I do. Here's how I do it. I would actually need some mentorship for someone to kind of throw the criteria at me because I am not fluid or fluent in these criteria. I know enough that to get a kid talking sometimes, I have to model sounds. I know that maybe similarly, if the child is ready, I would model sounds possibly with actual letter shapes and then blended letter shapes. And then eventually I might work up to whole words, maybe broken so the kid can kind of put the sounds together. And then my ideal would be, can I get all these things and maybe have them integrated, move away from a one-to-one, maybe safe space if they happen to feel safe. If they happen to feel safe with whatever adult is helping them, could be me, could be one of my support staff. Can I move that exact, is there a portability to it where the kid will now start to do those sounds and moments with a whole group? And then probably come back to the kid again and say, okay, you were playing for the whole group, but how much of that made it in? And this is where I get into this interesting space between language processing and sometimes learning disability, because that's the other context here, is that I'm working with students that also have LDs or are not neurotypical. So there's an extra layer to this for me, which is just an extra layer. What the hell? Suffer Clough, figure it out. And I get that. But for me to actually lay out the criteria, or I forget the actual statement, but for me to speak specifically to it, I don't know how to. And again, I'll bring it back to, I've never considered this before. Never, ever, ever considered this. And what I'm seeing is that partially that's because of the context that I work in, because I present my new, like, hey, fellow teacher in the room next door, how do you teach your students to read? And they're like,
so that's the perfect place for us to jump off, because Rochelle says, my question was one you could pose to others. Instead of how do you teach students to read, you ask, how do you help students decode language effectively?
here's the awesome thing to that. I would still be in the exact same place, because the teacher would say back to me, do you mean teach them to read? So they would flip it back on that. I love how you reworded that. I get it. Me and Chids on here are like, we called this podcast Decode It, because we were understanding that code switching is really useful. And anyone that happened to land, they're hearing on one side of our mouth, we're talking as dads and dudes, but we're also using these triggered words and these sounds and these things that are like, oh my, yeah, I totally know about that thing. So we are aware of the code switching. What I will say to you is that the fluidity, the fluency, as Chids might say, of being able to move back and forth between that language is a higher level type of synthesis and analysis. And I'll say some colleagues I've encountered, they don't have it. I can pose that question. How do you support a student's process of decoding language? I can turn that, like I can give you the EduBabble side of it. I want to make sure that EduBabble is on point with the actual trajectory of how our board talks about it. And I can break it down into something more familiar and easier to sort of bite down. And I can do that. I think I'd be in the same space as someone would be like, I don't know. Like, I think I would still be in that kind of space. But I appreciate the reframe. Thank you, Rochelle. I appreciate the reframe. And I deeply appreciate you participating in this discussion, because I'm on fire right now trying to figure this out and realizing that who I thought I could ask, I can't. Now that's just, I don't know. We encounter that often, right? People doing their jobs, but not having, they're doing their jobs. They're doing the work. But they're not going to be a mentor to me. Not in this moment. So I appreciate your mentorship. Thank you.
And I appreciate it as well, as Rochelle says things that activate my prior learning. And I'm happy to say that I'm not in complete cognitive dissonance at the moment, which it can be a good thing. But right now I'm glad I'm not in the middle of that space, because when you ask, how do you teach kids how to read, now that I think of it, that is a loaded question. And it's overwhelming, because maybe Rochelle would agree, as a primary teacher teaching kids how to read, how to speak, how to read, man, it's a beast, and you have to break it down. And that's why it's important that we have these assessments and procedures.
Well, you know what makes it awesome? Sorry, I'm looking for some right now.
What makes it awesome
is when you can start doing that cross paneling, because it can be, and I just love how that blows open the conversation, where people that are doing something can celebrate. Those that are doing nothing can kind of go, okay, I'm a little uncomfortable right now, but I see the value in this. Like, it illuminates the conversation in a great way. And any one person's approach, I would argue, if they're trying, is a good approach. Sorry. If they're aware, inevitably something's going to make it into their pedagogy. It's just I think it's how we work. It's really hard to not do a thing once you know a thing. It ends up becoming more frustrating and fatiguing. I think the work to keep it out is so much more than just the work to try and do one small part of it. That's my hopeful response in education. But I like when you go cross panel. I've always loved student success conversations across panel. I've loved re-engagement across panel. I love this sort of like care and concern for kids across panel. Like these are the moments where you get the sense of what it takes to be on the same page. But this one reading is just one room in this house.
Some of the best advice I received when I moved from primary to junior was, Roland, do not change how you operate in the way you teach kids how to deal with language, and all the best practices you picked up as a primary teacher. Do not shift. Do not believe that the minute you walk into grade 5 that everybody can read and everybody can do this and everybody can do that. And I remember, like, even this person took it to an extreme. This person was a retired principal who I respect very much. He's one of my mentors. And when I was talking to him about making the move from primary to junior, he said to me, he gave me this advice, and he said, continue to invite the students to the carpet where you sit in the chair. They're in front of you on the carpet and you read to them. Don't let go of these things. Don't let go of these practices that make kids feel good about language literacy. Helps them make connections to the good opportunities they had when they were younger, learning to deal with these things. Don't let go of any of that. And I didn't, and it was friggin' awesome because it kept my head in a good space for when I had a kid who was in grade 5 who never really picked up what they needed to in grade 1, 2, and 3 for whatever reason. I had the tools, I had the understanding to be able to zero in on what I think might have been the issue, aside from LDs and all kinds of other things that complicate it. I was able to then pinpoint, okay, this is what it looks like is going on here, and these are some of the things I can do to make this student feel welcome in grade 5, but I can also give them what they need to continue to grow as a reader or a writer or a speaker. Best advice I ever got, man. And now, even working with grade 7 and 8 students, even when I worked with high school students, I would tap into the primary teacher in me. I would, for a couple of reasons. Number one, to help these kids not feel bad about who they are and where they're at in their learning journey. Um, that was the worst for me. If you feel like you can't do anything, then you're not gonna do anything. You're not gonna try. So there was a lot of that, and I have the luxury of not having to write a report card and the stress of you got to get this done because you need to report on it somehow, some way. It didn't like rule my life when I was in the classroom, but I was very cognizant of the fact that it needed to get done in some way, shape, or form. So Rochelle says a couple of things. She answered your question about when you were asking, is it different learning another language? She said, if you're talking about what a board provides, no. If you were talking about in general, learning a language is the same no matter what the language is. And she's asking you if you've checked out Dr. Nancy Wise.
So here's my new radical candor. Radical candor. So Rochelle, tell me, what is your experience with Nancy Wise been? How has Nancy Wise contributed to your efficacy? And this is another conversation, Rochelle, that I was throwing at Chids' spot, but this is me giving a little tug on the hook when someone does something like this, makes a recommendation. And I sort of like, okay, so let me know what's pulling on the other side. So what's pulling you into this person? This isn't me saying no, not at all. I think it's just a way that I've come to learn. Like, I want to know more about the actual individual. So if you would indulge me, I'd like to know a little bit more. So,
and then Rochelle says that she wishes that there'd be more cross-panel discussions.
Yep. I think that you're talking when we say that, I think it's the culture is what actually inhibits it. That's all it is. You can say logistics too, but the expectation that the board is going to openly support that growth isn't. It's. I think they do, but they're working within scarcity, right? They're working within contracts. They're working with whatever. I've long accepted that if there's something that I need to get better at, it's going to spill outside the bells. It'll do it naturally because I'm surfing the web or designing something. I've also cut the controversy there. The dissonance is that I also get pissed off when I'm told to do certain things between the bells. So the scheduled conversations you're talking about, Rochelle, sometimes for me, I'm like, this is not a good way for me to spend my time right now. And even in a third way, I've had moments of sort of comeuppance where I swing back around. I'm like, okay, no, I need to make time for this. I get it. I get why the board is on fire about this. So there's a whole lot of stuff pinging off of that. What I will say when I hear your statement is when I hear that from colleagues, I always want to press in and say, well, how are you activating that statement on your own? Or how have your efforts to get to those conversations been frustrated? Or how are you actually rocking it? And some people just say stuff like that. Not saying you're that person, Rochelle, but I have encountered other people that throw down, statements like that, and they want it, but they're not doing any of the work to get there. They just sort of and they just recognize that there's an element of school that's frustrating to them. But I love to hear their tactics when they're trying to make that happen.
Gary agrees with you. Good morning, Gary.
Morning,
Happy
Gary.
Canadian Thanksgiving, Gary. The reason why I keep calling it a Canadian Thanksgiving is
Well,
because
you have to.
we have many listeners, and some of them are from different countries. So I want to
Well,
make sure they
Canada.
understand it's
Yeah,
Canadian.
we haven't trademarked that shit, right? Thanksgiving's everywhere. Now the other thing too is we can have Thanksgiving anytime.
True, but
I try to.
it is marked on a calendar that this is the Canadian Thanksgiving.
That is true.
So I'm just going to go with that flow. And then when the Americans have their Thanksgiving, they have like 30 days off. Like they're like, we have this many days before the Thanksgiving. Go home and hunt your turkeys and make your turkeys and
Hunt your turkeys.
talk about how America is the best. And then after you eat the turkey, you have days off because you must enjoy the holiday after you've hunted and eaten the turkey. Now you must digest it.
I will say, like, where I go, and I don't know if have you mentioned this? I don't know, but we've had a conversation at least that where the Costco that I go to gas up in the morning is right beside. There's these massive farmer fields, and I think you've seen some of the photos I've taken of these fields, and they're really cool. Sometimes the color and the mist rising, but there's also a whole lot of wild turkeys, and now I've heard those are pretty much like first cousins to velociraptors. So you don't want to get between, you'll get messed up. It's going to mess you up bad if you think you can just go out and pick one of those turkeys up and take it home for dinner. However, I have thought to myself on more than one occasion as we get close to, like, because there's a butcher shop near my house that I've bought a turkey from, like a fresh turkey. It's lived a great life. Heck, I probably could even press back and ask what the name of the turkey was, and the farmer that grew the turkey. So there's been a couple times I thought, I'm grabbing gas. Maybe I could just walk over and pick one up and throw it in the back of the car, and then we'll have the full event at home. So the one step up from the fresh turkey, I guess we would be bringing home the live turkey. I'm like, okay, here we go, kids. We're going to learn something about food sources.
So strangely enough, my Costco is near farmers' fields, and there are wild turkeys roaming around all the time too, which is really kind of a cool connection to what you just said. Okay, Rochelle's dropping major wisdom here.
Okay, here we go.
She's providing you with information about, I want to say Dr. Nancy Drew, but it's
Dr. Nancy Wise.
Dr. Nancy Wise. So this is what Rochelle says. She agrees with Dr. Wise that FI is for all learners. She is trying to provide the science of reading materials in French for the French teachers. I appreciate her efforts to provide us with the tools and resources to help us. Then Rochelle says to help us meet our students' needs. Watch out, Rochelle's going to be honest here. She hasn't made any effort to talk with her high school colleagues.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the straight upness. This is the moment, right? Well,
This is
Rochelle,
the
you and I are talking now. Who'd have thunk? I'm your colleague. Well, we are. We're doing cross panel right now.
And Gary's here. So Gary's secondary, hardcore secondary in student success.
So this is even cross. This is cross panel, cross Ontario, right? Because we're in different jurisdictions. So Rochelle, I don't know if I've ever said. So I'm in York Region District School Board. So public school board, secondary. Yeah.
And yeah, I love what we got going on here, because you are public school board, secondary, spec ed, but you've been on the periphery and you've been in the center. Rochelle, I don't think Rochelle's always been French immersion, because she had to start. Oh, Rochelle, I don't know if were you a core French teacher before French immersion? Anyway, Rochelle's French immersion, primary, digging deep into all the good stuff that a primary teacher would do. And then Gary is secondary and, like I said, student success. But when he's not in the student success room helping whoever walks in that door, he's doing model UN stuff down the hall with kids that are totally into that kind of, I don't want to call it higher level, but just that experience of like international politics and education and stuff like that. So we got a great mixed bag here. Great.
We have a great panel here today at this Sunday edition of Decoded Podcast. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, and also known as the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend, but also, as Chris called it, the Walmart surprise edition of Decoded Podcast. There's a lot going on here.
I'm not even going to make it back to that example. I know.
You're not,
I don't know. I'm looking for an orange marker right now. So.
Oh, cool. You keep looking for whatever art you need. Speaking of art, a couple of things about art. Chris was in Waterloo Region Friday night, and we did what Chris thinks is our 7th Foodapalooza. I have no. Let me be frank with you. Let me be honest with you. I don't know how many we've had, but regardless, we had a couple of guys join us. I don't want to dox them, as they say in the internet world, but 2 educators from Waterloo Region joined us. It was fun. And when Chris got to Waterloo, he came to my house. We started here. Chris gave me well, Gary and Rochelle will know, but for those new listeners out there, Chris does some art almost every episode. I don't know if I can say every episode, because I don't know if you've done them for all, but
I think I'm running about maybe
98%.
98%. Yeah,
okay, so 98% of the time over the last 6.5 years, Chris will create something. It's usually some visual art. Chris will create visual art, and he will show us at the end what he created based on the conversation that we've had. And I always tell Chris, like, that art is gold. Like, we should turn that into a book, into a coffee table book, the Decoded Podcast coffee table book of all Chris's art. Great for prompting conversation and wondering and reminding us. Sometimes I look at the art and I'm like, I don't know what the hell we talked about that day, because it's funny. I've noticed most of the time, Chris, when you talk about our episode, you'll talk about it obviously from your perspective and run with that. And I talk about it from my perspective. And I think rarely are we on the same page with how we walk away from the episode, which is really also kind of cool. Having said all that, Chris pops his trunk and he's like, this is for you to check out. And it's a bin full. It's all the art Chris has done for Decoded Podcast. And I have to say that this is the selfish part, which is friggin' fantastic. One of the artworks that he created, he said I could keep. Well, and I'm going to throw him some more props. He said if there are other ones that I want to keep, just to send him a digital picture of them and I can keep them. So I'm like, oh my God, that's friggin' fantastic. So I have to look through them, but the bin is huge. There's, I don't know how many pieces of paper in that bin, but it's all the art of the Decoded Podcast.
At least 200. Probably
Okay.
somewhere between two and I'd say at least 200 pieces. Yeah.
Okay, so Rochelle says that she was a core French teacher, then a classroom teacher, and now a French immersion classroom teacher. And Rochelle just dropped a bomb. It's also Oktoberfest for us
Yep.
with German heritage. And for me, I have no German heritage, but it's KW Oktoberfest. So happy Oktoberfest, everyone.
I like that. That's a good reminder. And that just to say, the Foodapalooza that we just did when we met up for food on our list. So Rochelle, Gary, these Foodapaloozas flip flop between Waterloo and York Region. Waterloo and York Region. We kind of alternate. So next event will be somewhere in my neck of the woods. And what's kind of interesting is that there's a different crew of individuals, educators that come out depending on what region we're in. We haven't been able to have that main meeting space yet where we've I mean, apart from me traveling back and forth and Chid's traveling back and forth, we haven't had that moment where others have come for the food specifically. So working on that one. But oh no, wait, in the summer it did. In the summer it did. We did have somebody come with. Did one person come? Yeah, they did. That one when we had tacos, didn't we had somebody come from your because they were driving from somewhere really far. Jay came that far, right?
He did, yes.
Okay, so Jay came that far. Okay, anyways, on this list, on the list that we just did on Friday, there was the possibility of getting some German food. As it ended up, we took usually there's 4 or 5 places on there, but we did not get to include it. We were walking downtown Kitchener, and I was actually surprised that it looked like some of the stalls that were going to be serving stuff up, they were all shuttered. Yeah, it was nice to walk down there with all the lights, but I was thinking, man, like, where's my schnitzel stack? Yeah, I want to get my schnitzel on a stick or something. So, tried though.
We thank you for talking a little bit more about Foodapalooza. I mean, Gary and Rochelle, if you're interested, we can certainly let you know the next time one happens, and then the next time one happens in and around Waterloo region. It's pretty cool. The base is that Chris and I are going out to eat good food. The bonus is when people join us because we can't control other people's schedules and schedules, interest, whatever, right? Um, I think it's pretty cool that we tell people, okay, here's the list, and then people will say, okay, I can't start with you at this place, but let me know when you get to this place, and I'll meet you there. So there's lots of it's very open ended. You can come and go as you please.
Yep.
Gary just dropped on us his resume. So he started in spec ed. I didn't know that. Half a career in history, social sciences, and now SST. But Gary, you still teach, don't you teach a social studies course on the side? Or are you full-time SST now? I don't know. Um, Gary says he'd love to attend either destination.
So
Then
does that mean Gary's down? Gary's in? Wants to come?
Gary says he's interested. He's in as far as he can be, right?
Do you have
So
Gary's details?
I have Gary's email, so
Okay,
I
that
can
works.
find Gary. I know where Gary works. That's cool, Gary. So the next time we do a Foodapalooza, I will add you. I'll remember this moment. I will add you to the email, and then you can decide what you want to decide. We have rules. We have rules.
Wait. Yeah. Okay, walk them through. Let's see if you remember them because I fleshed them out at the meeting. Yeah.
What? You're a literacy numeracy team teacher now? Oh, as well. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, cool. So Gary's working on helping kids boost their language literacy and their numeracy. Wow. You're wearing those hats, Gary. So the rules of Foodapalooza. Chris and I like to go to. It is a priority that we go to restaurants that are not um, that are not franchise restaurants. So we look for one-offs in certain cuisine areas. It's very important to us also that those restaurants, or it doesn't have to be a restaurant, it could be a food truck, but it's important to us that it's family owned and run, not like a corporation.
And that's
And
two separate. So
yeah, that's two separate.
that's actually two separate things. Go ahead,
Oh,
go.
sorry, you're saying family owned and family run is two separate things. Okay.
I think probably because what you're about to say. So what's the third thing?
The third, or the third thing is that you got family in the kitchen cooking. Like mama's back there, or there's
Someone that
family,
knows.
someone that knows. Yeah. So
Yeah,
if we're eating Eastern African food, which we did have, and it
we
was
did.
quite tasty. I don't know if that joint is family owned, but whoever was in the back making the food and then presenting it, I think did a great job
Mhm.
of providing us with that experience of that food and that culture.
We try to go 3 of 3. I think our starting point is always avoid the franchises, right? And we're hitting up local businesses to try and make sure that they're making their money, right? That's always cool. Um, I saw a couple people in the back kitchen because sometimes that's where the bathrooms are. So when I passed, I poked my head in, and there was an elder in there, whether they were cooking or they were just there overseeing, right? They were on their stool in the corner. So who knows? They were just kind of sitting there. Um, I liked it. Yeah. So Gary, the rules kind of work, right? And we've been fortunate. Have we tried franchisee stuff? We have. Do we lean on that? No. I mean, we just did Mr. Puffs as a dessert, and that's a franchise. They're dropping one in our area too. So we're trying to hit at least the level 3 expectation. Make sure that we're getting to those spots. It's cool though how it creates the lens. It creates purpose, right? Because then there's no easy choices. There's no easy choices because you have to say, okay, like, could I just eat this somewhere else? And that's, I think, the overarching kind of energy is like, this is the only place that we're going to taste this. And we've had the other part too, is that in doing this, we've had some remarkable conversations with people running the show there. People like just so willing to talk about why they use this over that, or the products that they're making, and you could see the joy, or to see like so I forget the name of the one cafe we went to last summer, and we hit the doubles, and that mom, like the mom talking about the daughter, it was either the daughter or the niece, and in that moment, like mom was kind of out front with us, the niece was in the back preparing the doubles, but just the joy of being able to talk about the family working in the kitchen, you could see it on their face, and it was awesome. And then we're eating this delicious food, the chickpea and the soft warm flour bread. Like, oh god, like my mouth's watering now. Like, you're eating it and hearing the story and seeing their pride and happiness, and it's phenomenal.
I
So
think it was the daughter.
yeah.
Now I got to tell you, bro. So I'm going to throw in some anarchy here.
Okay.
We do have the rules, but I believe that we will supersede any rule to just
Yep.
get the bite that we're interested in or looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris is right. Like, we would like to give our money to the small businesses, and Chris, more than me, is always interested in having a conversation. I'm not opposed to it, but I know Chris will dig deep. I got to tell you though, when we were at that East African restaurant, man, I had to do. I was bothered. I would have so our server, who was also the bartender, she seemed to be running the whole place at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
She was young, so I'm guessing like no, not past 25 years old.
I'd say
Right?
early 20s. Yeah.
Okay. And she was ethnic, like you could tell by her English that you know, I made assumptions that she was not. Probably English was her second language. I was making assumptions. I would have loved for her to sit with us and eat with us and tell us her story, because
Hmm.
I got a vibe that she had a story, her background, how she ended up working that restaurant, what's she doing with her life, right? Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, is this it, or something happened? I would have loved, but obviously not appropriate, on a number of different levels. But to me, that was a lost opportunity that maybe was never really an opportunity, but that you and I, as we go to these different places and we meet the people who actually care, or it appears as though they care about what they're doing and the food that they're making and our satisfaction with their creation, that conversation becomes part of the experience. And so it reminds me of, as you know, I think the mom and the daughter came out of the store to check in on us as we were eating the
Right
dinner
outside.
out of
Right
my
outside.
trunk.
Yeah.
And then when we went to the Filipino restaurant, and this is COVID time, so we're outside eating at the back of my car.
Call it out. Roselle's. Roselle's.
Roselle's in
Yeah.
Waterloo. The Roselle opens the door and is waving at us, checking in to see how is the food. Like,
Yeah. It's delicious.
if Roselle wants to come out and sit with us as we eat, awesome. Have my seat and let's talk. So the East African restaurant, for one reason or another, I haven't pinpointed it yet. If we invited the waitress to sit with us and to eat and talk, I literally would have been all over that.
Yeah.
All over that. Tell us your life story. What are you doing here? Like, what's happening here? Why do you work here? Where are you from in terms of your cultural background? Because your English doesn't sound like it does for most native English speakers. Like, tell me, you're like 20. What the hell? What's going on? How did you end up here? Like, you're running the bar, you're running the kitchen, like, you're doing it all. What's going on? I want to know more. Didn't happen. But that's the kind of stuff we dig into, I would say.
The other element that we had, which we don't always have, we had a local going with us that almost at every place was one of the individuals eating food with us, part of our group, knows Kitchener like inside and out. They were being our impromptu tour guide, historian, like geolocator. So I think part of the sitting down with the server, the trade-off was this individual was telling us stories all evening. So we were getting a lot of background information, like what was on this site before, or that's where we played. That was the place where, this thing happened. So that was a cool gift, but it also was like we had a constant tour information about Kitchener. And that's cool because I realized I said to you a couple of times, like when I get there with you, I know when I'm kind of in Cambridge. I don't really know when I'm in Waterloo or Kitchener because you drive when I get there, and and the vice versa when you come here. But that was kind of funny as we're downtown Kitchener. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been here, right? And you're like, no, we haven't walked this. I'm like, okay. So I actually did feel like I was a little bit like there was a really cool element of being on vacation, like how my mind works when I'm on vacation. I go exploring, and it was cool to have somebody that was local that was talking about the lore and the background and this used to be here and this thing happened over there. It was really, I like that. I like that. I feel like my story keeping and curiosity was satisfied because of the individual that was hanging with us.
So, I mean, I don't mind. I think it's okay to drop his name because he's been in our space. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
Carlos. I won't give the last name, but Carlos. He's a junior teacher in our district. I don't know if Gary knows Carlos. Carlos, I worked with his sister, and his brother is an administrator at St. Benny's, so that might give you some clues. And then Rochelle, no, I'm sure she knows of Carlos. Um, Carlos he spent his youth in downtown Kitchener pretty much. So I felt safe downtown Kitchener with Carlos with us. I just felt like if something were to happen, just his presence alone would turn me into Superman, is how I felt. So, a couple of funny things. Chris and I have never gone downtown Kitchener to do Foodapalooza for a number of different reasons. We've had stuff on the list, we just haven't gotten there. But really, what's really funny, which kind of made me sad, was So we were right at Kitchener City Hall, and that stretch of King Street is closed right now for Oktoberfest vendors. And it was at night, so the vendors were closed. Their little shacks on the street were closed, but they had lights strung up down the street. And Chris was like, "This is awesome. Like, is it always like this?" And I was like, "No," like in a sad way, because that street's a gong show when it's not Oktoberfest. Like, it's just a gong show down there. And that's why, like, I don't want to be down there on a Friday night, going from place to place, getting food. But because it's Oktoberfest, so naturally there were a lot of people down there. Oh, yes! I'm going to drop something. Gary knows Carlos very well. I forgot Gary. Sorry that I forgot. Um, so anyway, I was sad that Chris is like, "Is it always this beautiful down here?" I'm like, "No." But I wish it was. That'd be pretty cool if it was. And yeah, Uptown Waterloo has parts of it that resemble downtown Kitchener. So Chris was like, "Hey, I've been here before," and I'm like, "No, bro, we've never walked these streets at night." And I do that so that your wife will let you continue to hang out with me, because I'm sure we could come up with some interesting situations down there. But Carlos was with us, and you should have seen the smile on his face. Like, the guy is just, he is grateful. He is grateful for everything he has. He knows where he came from. He holds those roots tight, but he also advances and he moves on. That's how I picture Carlos. So yeah, it was good times. Gary says that he loves being enriched by the stories of others. That is
Hmm.
definitely a gift. And here's the bomb. Now I remember Gary grew up with Carlos's family, and Carlos's brother is Gary's son's godfather. So yes, I remember now. Sorry, Gary. Gary knows that family very well. Man, the connections, the connections.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that you want to drop today, Chris?
No, I have things. I'll flip them back to Polo.
Got
Hopefully, you and I can talk to it about stuff during the week. I have a thing. I have something I'm going to spring on you at some point, but maybe
Okay,
I'll wait until next week's episode.
that's cool.
It's no rush on it, but yeah, I'll spring it on you then.
Were you able to create any art today, Chris?
Yeah, I was just finishing the last thing on it. Just give me one sec there.
Yeah. Take your time as you do that. I'm looking forward to a couple of days of just chill. I'm looking forward. Um, oh, can I share something quick? No, I don't want to
Hmm.
share it. No, I'm good. I'm good. Uh, okay, so this is what it looks like to me. It looks like there's a question mark coming out of a bag of fire. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
well done. It is a
Oh,
question mark with
it's the mystery bag, surprise bag.
a little bit of that.
Oh,
It's I've mentioned this before, an interrobang. Do you know of this punctuation tool?
it does not sound familiar to me.
You know it. You actually, well, I think explain to you. So an interrobang is a mashup of an exclamation mark and a question mark,
Oh,
and it's an actual thing. But you
oh,
know how often, at the end of a text or something, you might do those separately. Like sometimes you
yes.
just try. You can actually set the text so it'll put it together, and it's a real thing. It's an interrobang.
Okay.
So a question, like you're questioning, but with like what, like with astonishment. Yeah. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
And
So
is
and
the
it is
bag
on
on fire?
fire.
Okay.
It's on fire. It's yeah. When you said a bag of fire, it's like the interro bang on fire. Yeah.
Got you. Okay, that's very cool. Very, very non-Rolandish in
Yeah.
my ESL upbringing, I guess I could say. I still struggle with a lot of the ins and outs of the English language. I wonder why someone created it the way it is, and why there are so many rules that contradict each other. And
Hmm.
then I'm at the point now where I just create my own words and I do what I want. I create grammar the way I like it. And there's always the English teacher who's like, "That's wrong." And I'm like, "Bro, you can believe," or bro, sister, whoever it is, "you do your thing, I'm going to do mine. Thank you." Um, there's something about midlife, educated. I have some privilege to do what I want in those circles and don't really care what other people say about it. It's kind of nice. It's a little freeing. I'm not doing it with like reports to my SO. I'm not making up stuff and using my grammar. I'm following the rules of English as best as I can for those types of things. But on the outside world, I do what I want and how I want it. Spelling, I don't even care about spelling anymore. I don't even care about spelling anymore. You should see my son when we do his schoolwork and he's doing like rough drafts and brainstorming. He's trying to get the spelling and I just lose my mind. I'm like, you're sabotaging yourself. Get your ideas out of your head. Who cares what they look like on the page? Get them out of your head. Don't sabotage that part. We can fix the spelling later at the end. We let ChatGPT do that for us. You do everything else. Stop it. And then he's like, Dad, and he starts laughing at me. I'm like, no, you're doing something here. You're sabotaging yourself. Stop it.
Hmm.
Just get it out of your head. I don't care what it looks like. As long as you can decode it for me, we're good. Gary says, have a great family holiday. Wishing all our decoded listeners a great Canadian Thanksgiving, Walmart surprise, Oktoberfest and Kitchener-Waterloo holiday.
Hmm. And thanks. And Rochelle, wherever you are, I don't know where you are on the screen, where I am on the screen. Fist bump to you. I don't know. Up. I don't know. One of the two. Yeah. Thanks for helping me out. I appreciate the this was cross panel. This is, decoded cross panel and cross country, not cross province, I guess. I where I go from these moments is like I feel lifted. The challenge that I don't know how to deal with, those things excite me. I think it falls into that bucket of, at this point in my career, the things that light me up, I'm starting to recognize are the important things. Because the stuff that just kind of passes by, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I either can't action it or it's not an immediate need. And this one right now, working with one kid in particular and wanting to be a part of their story of helping them to decode language. I want to be a chapter. I want to be a part of that. I'm not the end game here, but I want to be an awesome representative of that part of the process. So I like that. I like how that lights up my service and duty operating system, those elements, and how it right away handshakes with care and compassion to sort of make sure that this kid has a sense of the dignity of learning English, right? Like the dignity that you can help feel about being able to communicate singularly and widely. So I'm digging this. I like this. It's good purpose. It's good purpose, and I'm grateful for it.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks, Chris. Have an awesome day. I'm sure I'll be talking to you
You as
about
well.
1,000 more times before I hit the sack. This was season 7, episode 5, number 270. Peace to you and everybody. Have a good one.
Peace, and thank you.